Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1728. We are now, what are we? Hang on, that doesn't seem right. Oh, yeah. We are now 99 days away from celebrating 5 years of Facebook Lives every single day for 5 years. So we've got 99 days to go. So the countdown is on. You're going to have to think of something special to do for that. But today we're talking Accountability Day, because every Wednesday I have to call my accountability coach and tell her what I did and didn't do in the past week for my goals and everything. And it's always good to have an accountability coach. Now, I apologize for being on a little earlier than normal, but I have a event to attend at 6 o'clock, which is my normal time. And I just got back from walking. Oh, you can just see it just faintly, my headband. Got back from walking Zeffie real fast. So she doesn't have to wait until 7:30 when the webinar finishes, but we'll still go for another walk at 7:30 just for her, because she'll know that it's walk time. You're late, despite the fact that we've already been for one. She won't care. She wants her normal walk time. She's got her routine. But Accountability Day, this is the day where I call my accountability coach and I have a race every time to see who can call each other first at 9 a.m. It's the funniest thing. And then we talk about, what my wins were for the week, what my goals are for the coming week, what did I do, what did I not do. And it's always good to have somebody to be accountable to, especially when you're going after some big goals and everything, because it helps keep you on track. Because when you've got to call that person and tell them, well, I didn't actually do anything this week, do you really want to do that? Do you really want to say, well, I didn't do anything this week? So I told her what I got updated and everything else about the store being updated with everything, and the store's rolling across the bottom of the screen here now, beforethedirtnapshop.com. And if you use the code SPRINGJOY10, you'll get 10% off your order, which is kind of cool. We're going to do that for a little bit. Oh, no, hang on. Don't use that yet because I haven't finished setting it up. I just remembered I'm midway through setting it up, and then I got diverted to work and totally forgot to go back after work and get that taken care of. So Spring Joy 10 will be live a little later. And you get 10% off your things. So telling her that sort of stuff, that was up and running. And I just had to figure out how to do the discount code. And it's been I'll tell you this, learning to do a print on demand through Printify and Shopify has been a very interesting exercise on doing things. Because once you get everything set up and running, it can just run by itself, and you only need to spend just a few minutes each week adding new products, taking down ones that aren't working, just going in, checking on everything, putting in new codes and stuff. And, it doesn't take, once it's up and running, it won't take long to maintain that, which is kind of cool because I have a whole bunch of designs ready to go. I just have to decide when I'm going to put them up. So I have a slew of designs. A little on the busy side. Yeah, having fun. But it's bringing out the creative side in me as well. And learning to use that with ChatGPT has been awesome, because you go into ChatGPT and go, okay, here's what I have. Here's the information that I have for this particular product. How can I make it sound really awesome? And ChatGPT will take all the information I give it and put it into something pretty. And I'm like, oh, good. And then I go in and I make some changes, so it sounds a little more like me. But I just say, here's the info. They make it look pretty. I go and make a couple of changes, and then we post it. So it's been kind of fun working with that too and learning ChatGPT. So, of course, all of this gets told to my accountability coach and things that are coming up and everything else. Then on the really cool side today is I got a notification that I had new DNA matches in Ancestry. So I went in and had a look, and one of them is meant to be like a second or a third cousin, according to what Ancestry has worked out based on our centimorgan matches. They think it's about a second or third cousin. So I went in there and had a look, and she had a tree up. And so I had a look at a tree that she had up there, and I didn't have anybody's names on those trees. And I'm like, well, there's got to be a connection here somehow. But it didn't have who, like the last person's name that she had on there, it didn't have who that person married. And I wonder who that person married. And so I went and looked up all the marriage records and stuff and found that person. And it turns out that person is the son of my great grand aunt. So the son of my great grandmother's sister. And so I was like, oh, that's really cool. So I sent a note to this person saying, hey, I've got that this person married this person and this person that this person married that you have in your tree. This is how I'm related to him. And so where do you fall underneath this couple? So I'm waiting to, and I said, is the one that you've got in your tree the same one that I have in my tree? And, where do you come underneath them? Like, are they grandparents, great-grandparents? Are they grandparents? I'm trying to think of the time they were born. Are they grandparents? They could be great-grandparents, or are they parents? Because it's at the right age, depending on who the person is. So I'm now eagerly awaiting to hear from them to see how the match works. So that's going to be fun. And I love that. I love when I get new DNA matches. I can go in and I can find them in my tree. Like, I'm looking at this tree and I'm going, I know that last name. What do I know? I know that name. Why do I know that name? So I go and look at my tree and I'm like, oh, I do have that person in my tree. Yes, yay. So I was able to link a mini tree with the big tree, which was awesome. I love it when that happens. Those pieces just finally fall into place when you've got when you got that little mini tree going, that's just floating around in the ether. And my big tree, it's part of the big tree. I just don't know where. And then you find exactly where it slots. And it's like, oh, that is so cool. Yes. And of course, I was able to confirm a lot of the information that I already had. That definitely that's where that piece goes. So that person that was in the mini tree and that person in my main tree were exactly the same person. So I was able to merge those two, and then I had to go merge their spouse as well to make it all work. And I got rid of all those duplications for that particular area of the tree. That was really cool. Also, too, today in New Zealand is Anzac Day. It's Australia and New Zealand. And Anzac's ANZAC, ANZAC, stands for Australian New Zealand Army Corps. And what's special about the Australian New Zealand Army Corps? Well, I will tell you. It was on this day in 1915. I think it's 1915. Pretty sure it's 1915. On April the 25th, which it is down in New Zealand and Australia, there was a landing at what's now called Anzac Cove. It's when the Australian New Zealand Army Corps, the Anzacs, invaded Gallipoli for one of their bloodiest battles ever. And it was all to do with them invading Turkey and trying to overthrow the what were they called? The Turkish people that were in power at the time, because they were meant to be joining up with the Russians or something. I can't quite remember the whole story, but they were there for like 8 months. And when I was last in New Zealand, when I was in New Zealand for New Year's 2019, on New Year's Day, we actually went to Te Papa, which is the New Zealand museum in New Zealand, and they had a Gallipoli exhibition that was on, and it was incredible. I will tell you, it was incredible. It was a very emotional thing to walk through, to see the living conditions that these guys were in. 8 months of all the stuff they had to go through, and they lost a lot of lives. And they had these massive statues. They had statues that were like 3 times the size of a human. And the cool part is that as you're in this room with this massive statue that was doing whatever it was doing, and I mean, they were down to, you could see the hairs on the people back. This was the models were made by Weta Productions. Weta Productions is responsible for Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, King Kong. They had some stuff to do with Avatar. What else did they involve with? Oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff they've done. There's a whole bunch of movies, but the detail on these these giant models was just amazing. I have got some photographs up close of a guy sitting there with a spoon with food on it, and you know how you can see the cells on the skin on the hand, like you can see the skin cells and the hairs. You could see that in detail on these models. It was the craftsmanship on these models was incredible, and they had based it on actual people who had been at Gallipoli, which was just mind-blowing. And when you walked into the room, it was dark and the lights were down on the statues that were there, and you got to hear the story about this person, about what they were going through, and it was done from their perspective. And then when you walked through the room to the other side, there was these plaques up on the wall that had the story written out a bit more about this person. And then you went into the next room and you just you basically followed the row of poppies all through the exhibit. It was unbelievable. It was, and they did a model of what their living conditions were like, showing you a whole model of the camp. It was just amazing. It was the one and it was a very emotional roller coaster going through this thing and hearing their stories and the stuff they went through. And this guy holding the spoon was literally having his last meal because he was being tried for treason, which meant he was going to get executed. But he had a stay of execution because what happened is that he had fallen asleep at his post and they were going to execute him because it was considered treason. But he got a stay because he had just come out of hospital after spending a few days in hospital. He was very weak. He wasn't back up to full physical, he wasn't back to full health at the time. And so they actually decided he was not executed for treason, because even though he fell asleep at his post and it was considered treason, the reason he fell asleep at his post is because he wasn't 100% healthy. He had just gotten out of hospital and he was straight back on to patrolling. And so, having to sit at his spot and watch and everything else. And so he got, but then what the problem was is that when I read the story, I said, well, what happened to him? And on the board there's no idea what happened to this person, whether they came back from Gallipoli or not. There is no further record of this person after the fact that he was granted immunity from being executed for treason because of his health conditions, for extenuating circumstances. So there's no further record of this person after that happened. And I'm just like, well, that's really weird. But then it went through, but the one that really, really got me was that it was a nurse, and you walk into the room and you're walking in and you're seeing the back of this nurse who's sitting there on these boxes, on these crates. And as you walk around, and you can see what she's saying is being scrolled around the top of the room as well. So they have this scrolling script that goes around, and you're hearing this voice talking, and it's reading the script that's scrolling around the top of the room. And then you hear this voice come down, and it was a female voice, and you walk around and she's got tears streaming down her face. She's holding these letters in her hand, and stamped on the letter that had return to sender, return to sender killed in action, I think it was, stamped on these letters. And I was like, oh my gosh, if you hadn't been notified that your family member had been killed in action already, you're going to get a bundle of letters that says return to sender killed in action. I mean, what a way to find out a family member died. And what had happened was that she was a Red Cross nurse. And so she was on the Red Cross ship that had left New Zealand to go over to Turkey there and off the coast of Gallipoli, where they could provide more medical assistance to those that were in the camp there at Gallipoli. And so she hadn't heard anything about this. And it was like a 3-month voyage at the time, I think it was. And by the time she got there, she's asking all these soldiers that come down, have you seen my brother? Have you seen my brother? Have you seen my brother? And then one day somebody handed her stack of letters, which had finally caught up with her, and it had on their return to sender killed in action. And she was so excited to be able to go and help her brother and to see him again and everything else. And her family back in New Zealand would have already known that her brother had been killed in action, but of course they couldn't communicate with her because she was on the ship. So it was just a heartbreaking story. And then reading through all these stories, it was just seeing the conditions hearing about the conditions that they lived in, seeing the models of what they lived in. It was horrendous conditions. They had people who were running up to the front line and bring in, the stretcher bearers. They would run up to the front line, bring back the wounded to the hospital, and they themselves were sick. And there was something about the drinks. I can't quite remember what it was, like the rum or something like that, that they were allowed to have so much per day. But the stretcher bearers decided to keep it for those that were like basically dying, and they would give it to them instead to help ease their comfort as they passed. And it didn't matter that they were supposed to be taking it themselves to help their bodies and their strength and all of that sort of thing. But it was just an unbelievable thing to go through. And every now and again I go back and look at the photographs and I'm just like in awe of these people. And so Anzac Day in New Zealand is a day to commemorate that, but it also commemorates everybody that has paid the ultimate sacrifice in any of the battles that New Zealand and Australia have fought in as well. So it's a day of memorial, and I've got a few friends who got together in Tauranga to go to some of the services there, because this weekend in New Zealand, my recruit course, otherwise known as a boot camp here in the States, they're getting together for a 40th anniversary. I can't believe it's been 40 years. Cannot believe it's been 40 years since I was in the Royal New Zealand Air Force, but that's coming up. Yep, so they're getting together this weekend to do a 40-year anniversary, and I'm like, I so wish I was there. But some of them were arriving in Tauranga earlier, and so they were able to go together to do the dawn services. So on Anzac Day, we have dawn parades, and you will see returned servicemen marching, and they'll have their medals on, or you will see family members who are wearing the medals of a parent or a grandparent who had served and was no longer with us. And that was their way of remembering them in their service and their sacrifice and things like that. So if you see my Facebook page, it has got my Anzac Day banner up there too. And, was it at the going down of what's that thing? At the going down of, let's see if I can find this really quickly, because it's really, there's this poem that was written by there was this poem that was called For the Fallen, written by Robert Lawrence Binyon, who was 1869 to 1943, and it was published in the Times newspaper on the 21st of September 1914. And it's the last verse of this that we always remember. There's actually 4 verses to this poem, but it's the last verse that most New Zealanders and Australians know, and it's, they shall not grow old as we are left to grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. And I can't read the rest of it because it'll have me going. So that's one of the things that we always remember on Anzac Day too, is we pay tribute to those who have gone before us. And, and part of those people live inside of us. If you think back to that, the math I did the other day, where you got 4,094 people. It's 12 generations over 400 years, 4,094 people that had to exist for you to exist today. And you carry a little bit of every one of those people in you here today. And you will carry, if you're from the Commonwealth, if you're from any walk of life, you would have had somebody that had been through some war somewhere along the way. And you may have had ancestors that were Gallipoli. I haven't found any ancestors in Gallipoli. I know I had a great-grandfather who fought in World War I. And then in World War II, he was a captain at Fort Balance in Wellington, which is a fort that overlooked the harbour entry, the harbour entrance into Wellington. And I know he did that in World War II. I had my paternal grandfather, his brothers, my paternal grandmother, and her brothers all had played some part in World War II. My grandmother, she was a WAAF, a Women's Auxiliary Air Force, and it was years later they became part of the Royal New Zealand Air Force, but she was there on the home front. My grandfather and his brothers and her brothers actually served overseas and saw different battles and wars and stuff over there. I don't have a lot of information about what they saw and what they did. I know my grandfather wouldn't talk about it, but my grandmother was full of stories about her days and the Women's Auxiliary Air Force and some of the stuff that she got up to. But she was on the home front, so she didn't actually get to see any action, but she was supporting those that were here at home on the bases and things like that. So anyway, I've got to get going. I've got to go grab on another call. So go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening. Tell those that are around you how much you love them. Give them a hug. Remember those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, and go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening. And I will see you back. Oh, hang on. Now, tomorrow evening, I'm going to be late because I have my mastermind group meets at 5 o'clock. If we're finished by 6 o'clock, I'll be on then, but I'll be on as soon as we finish, which could be any time between 6 and 7. So go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening. E konera.